This is Sales Reps on Fire, a podcast specifically for B2B sales professionals from SDRs to CROs and everyone in between. The goal of the show is to provide useful tips that are so valuable that anyone listening would think, wow, I've got to share this with my entire team right now. Let's get started. The following is a conversation I had with Shohan Rahman. Now, Shohan is currently a global sales leader at the company Square, and he has extensive experience from startups to large corporations where he focuses on building culture to help organizations move forward. He also has his own personal brand called Show Forward, where he focuses on helping and giving back through his experiences. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Shohan Rahman. Hey, friend. Welcome to the podcast. This is Sales Reps on Fire. I'm your host, Ian Agard, and today I have a special guest. His name is Shohan Rahman. Welcome to the show, Show.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate you having me here.
Awesome. Now, I do know, like I said, I see in the background, you're a huge Jordan fanatic shoe fan. Walk me through, what's the story behind that?
Yeah, so these are my top 24 Jordans. Story behind it is when I was younger and wanted Jordans, my parents didn't buy it for us. Me and my brother, we always had to have like the Reebok pumps and other shoes. So I made it a goal that when I, grow up, I'm successful. I can buy any pair of Jordans I want whenever I want. And now my kids want Jordans, and I tell them, sorry, you're gonna have to work hard for those.
I love it. So I did tease people at the beginning of the show, like, a bit of a bio, but I'm curious in your own words, Show, in the next 30 seconds or a minute, tell people who is Show, what do you do, and what inspires you?
Yeah, so I'm a sales leader here at Square currently. I've had sales experience for over the past 15 plus years in various industries: education, digital advertising, HCM and payroll, to on-demand pay and fintech, and now in the payment space. So really a different industry every time I moved around in my organizations. And currently, I'm also building a brand called Show Forward, where it's really about helping others with my experiences, teachings, coachings, etc. So I have a newsletter coming out called Pay It Forward. And the idea is so I can help individuals through video, just like, hey, here are like little things that I've constantly been working on or doing in order to help in the sales world or leadership world or even outside of sales. So that's who I am right now.
Amazing. I'm just curious, 'cause I did go on LinkedIn and checked it out. I saw the website. What sparked that? Like, where did that come from? Because it's something that's definitely a place of value and sharing. And I'm curious to know what inspired you in that.
Yeah, it's probably similar to your world, right? You put this podcast together to really share, different leaders and different things. So my thought was, I have all this experience. I get to share it internally all the time. I do a lot of mentorships, do a lot of sessions. I've gone around to all the Square offices and been able to talk about various things from calendar management to why video is important to building your brand and culture. And my thought was like, how do I actually be able to like share that outside of Square? And so I've kind of built it so that externally I can talk about it, talk about some of my learnings, teachings, and just philosophies to, again, help individuals.
I love it, man. God bless you. Amazing. Let's get into our conversation. I'm curious, what inspired you or what led you to pursue a career in sales?
Yeah, funny. I grew up being told I need to be a doctor, right? Like my parents. And I really wanted to do business. And in college, I took like 6 years to graduate because I kept changing majors, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then after college, when looking for work, like I started at the University of Phoenix, and it was higher education. So in turn, I thought I was doing something to help my parents feel better because my dad was a teacher. But it was a sales role. And, at that time, maybe I didn't think of it as a sales role because it was enrollment, but for-profit schools were big on enrolling people. It was a B2C sales role, and just loved it. Loved the connecting with people, loved the opportunity to grow, in general, loved the commissions and everything, right? It's just, you do a little bit of it. If you're good at it, you enjoy it, and you just evolve in it. And then as I move through different industries, it's just something I've always loved doing, really helping and impacting people, whether it was small businesses through the products and solutions we sold, large enterprises, or even just the fact that helping the actual sales individuals and the teams and the culture that you could create by helping them generate more income, having the life they want, more autonomy, etc. So just been passionate about sales.
Now, before we get back to the content in the episode, if you're a VP of sales or head of sales at a SaaS company doing at least $20 million in ARR, I want to invite you to schedule a 30-minute sales coaching workshop for your sales team. Now, this is ideal for BDRs, new hires, or your entire sales force. See, I will share with you during this workshop, I will share with you the top strategies from my Level Up Sales Accelerator to help your reps hit quota, prospect better, and get promoted faster. This will help you boost your MR by up to 30% within 8 weeks without changing your tools or your sales processes. Now, to learn more and to book your workshop, go to ian-agard.com. And now the link to that also is in the show notes of this podcast. All right, now let's go back to the episode. Amazing. I'm curious, going back to that first job, like walk me through, if you can remember, like what's your day look like? How are you getting people to come to schools? I don't know.
Yeah, great question. This is obviously a while back. For-profit schools have changed since then, but when I got started and I was an individual contributor, inside sales rep, 100 calls a day, you're going through your CRM, right? Everybody has Salesforce nowadays. Back then, it was a proprietary CRM. You're making the dials. These leads are coming in through all the advertising that University of Phoenix was doing back then. And then you have the opportunity. You got to make the calls, get on these calls. A lot of times they're a lot colder, right? They're not like inbounds. They're basically leads that have came in. You get some great inbounds, but a lot of times you're outbounding to people that maybe they clicked something, they weren't really interested. Now you have to have like a really good discovery conversation in order to understand why they were interested, either going back to school, starting school for the first time, and talk about those pain points on what they wanted to become and really be able to sell a high ticket item. And if there's not enough pain and true discovery, like, you're not going to close somebody to go to an online education for $60,000 a year, right? So it was fascinating to me. It was early in my career, and I enjoyed it.
Amazing. I never thought that schools had a sales team, but yeah, I guess it's the product, and we make money. Cool. So now we're delving to leadership. At some point down the road, I'm sure there's many milestones. Can you walk me through that point where you made a decision or an opportunity came to you to go into leadership and sales?
Yeah, so at the University of Phoenix, I got a chance to move to Las Vegas, Nevada from Houston to take on a team of inside sales reps. So my first leadership stint. And what really made a huge impact is when I took that job, we all, as a leadership team, went to Zappos, the shoe company that Amazon owns now, by Tony Hsieh, who passed recently. Like, we got to go to Zappos and see how they focus on culture, how they take care of their employees. It was about delivering happiness to the customers, how Tony Hsieh sat on the floor with everyone and they turned all offices into conference rooms and no one had offices. And it just became like something that I became passionate about. Like, I would love to build cultures like this. And so everything I did from then on, when it came to being a leader, was focusing on creating a want-to environment for teams.
Wow, a want-to environment. I want to unpack that a little bit. Okay, so now you're a leader, rise up the ranks. Walk me through, if you could, or share with me, if you can remember, a moment in your career as a leader where things changed, shaped your identity. Maybe it was this workshop, or I always find sometimes we have a win or a loss down the road that defines us and shapes. Has that happened to you? Can you remember that, a moment in your career?
Absolutely. I'll give you three specific ones. One was that opportunity to go to Zappos. It defined how I lead. Another one was then I took a step back from the University of Phoenix and leadership. I went from a manager to a director role. And then after the director role, I had a great year, but I took a step back and went back to outside sales and being an individual contributor when my daughter was born, to have that autonomy and be able to be a sales rep that can manage time, be with the family, right? Go out to the things that my daughter needed. So that was a defining moment, becoming a parent while in sales. And then the third one is when my last daughter was born, and I was an individual contributor. She had to be hospitalized, and when she was born, and we were in the hospital for about 6 weeks. That we actually had to live there because she was in an intubated tube and like in the PICU they call it, or NICU, and that changed like my overall like understanding of sales. Like I had to still perform at a high level while being in there, and I was able to do that with some great leaders that let me kind of have my own autonomy but take care of business. Didn't miss a month, hit President's Club while doing that, really focused on calendar management, but it again defined me on my second stint in leadership and how I kind of manage my teams, manage my day, manage my calendar. So those three areas would be the biggest things that impacted me to define my career.
Yeah, wow. It's amazing how, excuse me, that you're able to like pivot like that based on your life, right? And I've never heard him explain to me that way. Um, Now, it seems like you're big on culture. You mentioned something. I just want to say it because you mentioned it twice. Calendar management. Let's just jump into it. I'm curious to know. Sounds like this is something that's important to be successful in sales. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the funny thing, my wife always jokes because it's like the biggest thing I preach to people on like, hey, how you become successful is calendar discipline. Calendar management plus prioritization equals calendar discipline, right? So like, I talk about it at Square with all the new hires that come in. I preach it to a lot of folks. It's the foundation of everything we do. If you can maximize your day, I don't work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. People think I do, but I just manage my time really well and I could get more done. People always ask me, like, how do you get so much done? When do you have time to do that? Well, I block out my day the way I need to. Every hour is blocked. All my personal is also on there. So I have a work life integration. If I have to go to my daughter's fencing match tonight, I have it blocked out and I'm going to go to that. And then I'm going to make up my hours later when I need to, like whether it's a email I need to send out, a follow up, or some sort of work I have to do. But everything is blocked out to the minute on my calendar. And because I execute on it, I'm just maximizing my time every time.
Amazing. Where did you get that? Like, is that something that came intuitively, or did you read a book, or you saw a leader do it, you copied? I'm curious because I've heard a lot of people talk about that, but it's not something you taught in school, so it came from someplace.
It's that third instance when my daughter was in the hospital and I wanted to still make sure, even though everyone told me like, hey, you don't have to work, you can take the time off, etc. So no, I'm never telling people you have to work when you have emergencies or things like that. I just had to work because I had to provide for the rest of my family while my wife was already off work. So I had to work. So while I did that, my calendar was so important that I had to go through the day where yes, I had to sit and be right there with my daughter when the doctors are there and talking about it. I had to leave to go out in the field and actually close some business. I had to come back, relieve my wife so she could have some time off and I can do my admin while I'm sitting in the hospital room. And then after she comes back, and she's doing overnight, I might do some follow-up emails. And in the morning when I wake up and get her coffee, I'll do some prospecting. Like managing my day in that hospital is what really created this discipline and focus and made me like really change the perspective on how to manage your calendar. And again, because I did it really well, I was able to hit every month of my quota, have a successful year with President's Club and get promoted. And, I talk about that a lot because it's so important. And at that time, like calendar was my lifeline.
I just want to do one more question on this because I think it's important, and we're kind of jumping ahead. But do you see now that you're preaching this, and I agree with it, when you coach people, do you see a big difference in top performers and average and low performers based on their calendar, how disciplined they are with their calendar?
Absolutely. It's how you execute even better, right? A top performer blocks out their day, knows when they're prospecting, who they're prospecting. They know when they're doing their follow ups. They typically have a system in place. And that system doesn't happen unless you're actually putting it on your calendar. And so I do see that huge difference, right? You have the calendars that I call it three types, all white space, just usually your meetings are set up. I have type two is the one that has everything reoccurring, almost like a to-do list. I got a prospect every day, 8 to 9 across the week, and then lunch across the week, and then admin across the week. It's more of a to-do list. And then you have those people that go, I'm going to block out every minute, or at least almost 80% of my calendar is blocked out because I know when I need to call people, who I'm following up with, where I need to be, what team meeting, what development am I doing. Top performers have all that stuff blocked out, and they typically can now maximize their time again.
Amazing. Wow. That's amazing. All right. So I'm talking about culture. We're at Zappos. You got some some framework there. I'm sure you've gained some stuff along the way. How do you create a high performance culture in the sales teams that you either inherit or you build?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. Culture, I always push something called culture equals consistency, right? It's a process, it's your brand, but it's really about being consistent. I always joke about it, like, don't be flavor of the month, right? The goal isn't you created some sort of spiff or contest and it's like just for 1 month and then the next month we don't even talk about it, or you have this new initiative, etc., and we do it for a month and then nobody does it ever again. Like, it's about consistency. I have a weekly newsletter, I have a bi-weekly newsletter. It's there every week. That builds trust. It leads by example. It creates that want to atmosphere, right? What I want in culture is people to wake up in the morning and go, I want to do this versus have to do this. And if you could create want to atmospheres with consistency, learning and development, just basically taking care of people the way that my bosses took care of me when I had my daughter in the hospital, or the way that Tony Shea at Zappos took care of their employees. That's how you build a culture. And I'm big on it. You trust, lead by example, have consistent whatever it is that you're doing.
Hmm.
And typically that'll be the foundation of any good culture.
So imagine I'm a new sales rep, and I join your team or your sales org or whatever, someplace where I'm with you. Yeah, what would you say to me, or to people that would establish, hey, this is the culture where you're, because culture, you don't say like, hey, Ian, here's our culture. Da, 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 da. You would just, it'd come through actions and examples. But did you do anything at the very beginning of the person's career that sets a tone? If that makes any sense?
Spot on. It should start actually before they even start,
Oh,
right? At interview process. It's
ooh,
the communication you have before they even start. It's when I worked at Paychex day one, they showed up at their cube and their cube was already set up, decorated, computers there, swags there. I have a new employee that starts, and guess what? They're getting all these things in the mail to their house, along with like new swag and everything prior to starting, because that's what culture is, right? That's like they just start in it. And to your point, it's not a list of things, it's just automatic because you've built a process, you're consistent with it. So every new hire gets the same stuff. Then on that first time conversing, they understand, like, hey, I want you to have autonomy. I want you to manage your day the way you need to, but it's important to do these expectations. So it's just going through it. And then weekly, whether it's the one-on-ones or the team meetings, it's just the same system of consistent process. And then, people just love being in that type of environment. They know we're actively listening. They know that we care about them. It's like, you are an adult. Like, if you need to take the time off, take the time off. We're not babysitting and managing you. So you're right. It's not a list of everything going through, but they come into a space that those things are already happening as far as processes, and a culture that's just there consistently.
yeah, I love that. Excuse me. I'm curious. Two things. It's not a question here, but I was curious from your perspective now. Can you give me a lay of the land of the kind of org that you're in charge of, like headcount, roles, inbound, outbound, stuff like that? How does that work?
Yeah, just to be honest, like my roles here at Square have constantly been changing, just because I typically take on new initiatives and new projects as they come up to help scale and grow and build. So my first year, I was overseeing Afterpay SMB sales globally with about 70 people, with 3 to 4 directors, and then the managers underneath them and the reps. Now, the past year at Square, I've been helping building some other things, channel sales, where we have a team that's working with partners. So I have a leader that reports to me that has a team that works specifically with strategic partners. I have a team, the enterprise sales team, that's working strategic, like basically accounts and opportunities. We have the incubator sales team that works on strategic projects. So they are out doing new stuff before we roll it out. And then I have a leader that's working with our enablement team to build sales ramp. So as new hires start, we're constantly helping them with that strategic initiative. So all of the various strategic sales here at Square.
Cool. Now, on that note, what, from your perspective, I don't know if you're a Salesforce guy or whatever you follow, but I'm sure there's some kind of dash or metric you need to follow to make sure that things are along the lines you want it to be. What key metrics do you focus on to ensure predictable revenue or growth or whatever the KPIs you're in charge of is consistent? What are you keeping your eye on daily or weekly?
Yeah, as a leader, one of the things that I care about is our pulse scores. We just did our pulse surveys, which is basically our engagement surveys that we do across the entire org. I think it's really important because it really tells you, is your org happy? Is your org going to stay, right? You're helping with your retention. So those things are very important. They give a lot of qualitative commentary, and it's important to understand and look for themes. So I'm a big pulse guy. We do it twice a year. And then the idea is once you do it and you review it and you look at all the comments and you come up with their action items, do you then, again, are you reactive or are you creating a proactive process? And I love it because it usually defines my next 6 months as far as proactive initiatives that I build and put together to help usually that environment, the culture, etc. Outside of that, on the sales side, it's all about leading indicators, right? We know we're going to get measured against all types of lag indicators, but leading indicators are what I'm always looking at to see, are we doing all the things correctly that'll set ourselves up in order to win when we look at that specific metric at the back end, right? If you look at it only then, you're always behind because it's a reactive measurement. Yeah. So leading indicators let me think about everything proactively.
Can you give me an example of what are one or two things that you look, those leading indicators? Is it activity? I don't know what
activity is each one.
Okay.
Yeah. Activity is an easy one, right? It just really depends on every sales function. And I have multiple groups, right? I have a channel sales group that measured a little bit differently, but like, are they, meeting with their partners? Like that's a big one. Are they at events? On my enterprise team, are they actually making dials, outbound dials, LinkedIn connects? Are they reaching out via email? What's their activity metrics look like? From there, right, are we looking at how many meetings are we having? And then obviously all the way to like how many contracts are we signing? Because once you get to that, that's a great leading indicator of something that's moving to implementation and eventually going live. Yeah. But it's looking at the front end versus the back end.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm curious because you seem like you're dialed in. I can feel it, right? How do you work on identifying and nurturing top performing sales reps? From the interview process, do you have a methodology or a question that you can define? They're going to be a rock star, he or she, or when they're in the team already, maybe it's a B player, you want to level them up to an A player. How do you identify them and make sure they're not lagging or getting complacent?
One is, like I mentioned about the calendar, right? You could open up someone's calendar and know, right? Like, are they a top performer or not based on how they manage their day? And that's a great indicator of like somebody that's action biased and is like focusing on the right behaviors because you can see what they're doing. So calendar management. I love doing assessments like StrengthsFinder or Myers-Briggs and stuff like that. So when you have development opportunities, people love those things too. But like that should indicate a lot of good things, especially if it's telling you like this person has specific characteristics and competencies that you should invest and develop in. I'm also a big fan of like talent planning, where like the 9-box method or high potential, low potential, etc. So you look at performance and potential. When you do these types of exercises continuously throughout the year, it lets you stay on top of knowing, hey, who's somebody that we're investing in. So it's not always what people think, right? Oh, high performance, automatically high potential, you need to invest in. It really is, yes, high performance is a great one indicator, but I'm also looking at potential behaviors, competencies that tell me this person is somebody you really double down on in order to grow their career, whether it's as an IC or into some leadership roles or into other places in the organization. And we're really spreading that team across the org.
That's amazing. It's funny. I typically always check out all my guests' LinkedIn before the conversation. You're the first person that has their Myers-Briggs. You're a E. What is it? You probably know it, but what is it here?
ENTJ.
Yeah, I was like, that's good. What does that mean? I mean, do you know high level? What does that mean? You're introvert, outrovert. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's extrovert, judgment, etc. I mean, I did a long time ago. It probably should take another test, but what I've done over the past like several years, we've done some other ones, emergenetics, StrengthsFinder, things like that, just to continuously grow. But ENTJ, I mean, again, I'm not an expert at reading it. I've done it. That's what I am. I do like it. It's very tell of like who that person is. I think a lot of people have told me like it's one of the few rare types of combinations. And it comes back to, if that is the case, then this is probably why I do certain things a certain way. And I hope that people that are experts in that look at me and go, wow, like he would be good in this, or he could help us here. And that's really what I want it for, is like, what could this tell you to give me the opportunity to be potential in something else?
Yeah, it's amazing. I did it when I was a rep, and it blows your mind because It reveals things to you that you didn't know. It's like, oh, I'm actually that way. And it's so I love that. Okay, so walk me through if you could. I mean, obviously, sales can be ups and downs, right? We can't control all things. We control a lot of things, but not all things. In those times where things are down or things are slow or whatever that looks like in your situation, how do you keep your sales team motivated or yourself motivated during difficult sales cycles?
Well, one, I think there's always this you know, idea that motivation is only about like money and things like that. And, I'm a big believer that it's not. It's actually what Daniel Pink in the book Drive says: mastery, autonomy, purpose. So, in order to keep anyone motivated, whether it's going through the roller coaster, whether it's just their first day on the job, or etc., is how do you create an environment where they have autonomy, right? And autonomy is earned, so it takes a while sometimes, but have some autonomy because people don't want to be micromanaged. They want to know that they can be given that task, given the opportunity to shine and go do the job. So autonomy, mastery. So they're constantly getting better. So it's all about development. It's all about providing additional training. It's about giving them additional perspectives, mentors, etc. So focusing on mastery and then focusing on purpose. What we do, like you have to have an underlying behavior to it, right? You have to want to sell what you sell. You have to want to help the people and the customer. So if there's no purpose behind it, or at least a purpose for you as far as like what this money and commission will do for you, like that is gonna be demotivating. So I'm very big on, if you focus on mastery, autonomy, purpose, you can motivate individuals, whether they're at a downtime, at a high time, at a new time. But it's being consistent with those things.
Yeah, I think knowing your why is very important. As a leader,
Absolutely.
knowing this, that should be like number one question the day of the job. What do you want to do? Like, what's your goals and why? And then think of the why, right? So if you didn't have
Right.
the why, you can use that as not as a carrot, but as a reminder, like, hey, why are we doing this? Why are you picking the call every day? The calls every day.
That ties in with the purpose side of it, right? What's their purpose for this?
Yeah. So, Sho, I'm curious. In your experience, I think I know the answer, but I'll just ask anyways. In your experience, what do top performers do differently than low performers, underperformers? Maybe two or three things you see consistently across the board.
Yeah, basic one, calendar management. I'm not going to dive into it more because we've talked about it. The other couple things is continuous learning. Like I think top performers want to keep learning and getting better. And it's not learning like, okay, yes, our company's having a training and I'm doing that training. It's they're doing additional research. They're reading articles. They're looking at 10Ks. They're doing reading the earnings reports. They're doing that extra learning that will help elevate your own role, right? Whether it's it'll that extra earnings report in 10K will help me get into this business, or that additional training or podcast I'm listening to gives me a new perspective that I didn't try and I could try something. So it's just having that continuous learning mindset, right? How many books did they read this past year? It's a great interview question. Always people ask, what's the last book you read? And I'm shocked that a lot of people are like, well, I haven't read any books lately. Like I want somebody that wants to learn. It's reading a book a month. That's my goal, is one book a month. Because every book will teach you something different. It's like the whole concept of go meet everybody on your team when you're brand new. You're not going to mimic everybody, but you're going to learn something from each person and be better. But like, are they continuously networking? And then the last thing I'll say is, in the sales world, and you probably know this, there's so much stuff. There's meetings all the time. There's new company changes. There's new product development. There's things that are happening outside in the macro economy. Like there's so much stuff. It's the people that are disciplined enough, and I do think this ties to the calendar, but it's just executing on the things that you need right now, right? Like I know what I can do right now to improve whatever it is you're trying to improve. More activity, get better, get a win, and they can just navigate through all the noise in
Mm.
order to execute. And I do think the calendar is a tool that helps you do that, but it's also prioritization, right? Who actually has their Slack on while they're prospecting versus turn off the Slack and then focus on prospecting,
Yeah,
right? Prioritizing those types of things. So executing through all the noise really is a separator of top performers and low performers.
I love it. You did say something that I want to just dive in a little bit that I didn't do when I was a rep. I wish I did, but I'm doing it now. Is the whole importance of building your business acumen. I was reading all the books, the sales book. You have to also know the business acumen, why they make, how they make business, revenue, yada yada yada. Return. If you know that, and something you're saying about 401k plans, and that's pretty cool. Yeah, yeah.
Great point on that business. So I mentioned I'm over the sales ramp program, and one of our key philosophies is focus on business acumen and discovery, right? In the front end, if you are really good at the business acumen side, then you could truly have a good discovery conversation. You can actually understand where those gaps are for that business because you understand business, whether it's a small business or a large business. If you can talk to them about, oh, yeah, operationally, you're missing this, or this is the revenue you're trying to generate, or this is the type of marketing you need to grow X, whatever you're trying to sell, like you can be a problem solver because you have good business acumen.
Amen. I love it. Here's about this question. Curious. What's one deeply held belief in tech sales or sales in general in the industry that you fundamentally disagree with?
Again, I hope people aren't going to hate me for this, but that money isn't the motivator, right? Like money is good. Everybody wants to make sure they get paid, but I think, regardless of that, if everybody is okay with the money they're making, they can make more and etc. But it matters about what the money does for them. It matters about the mastery, the culture, the autonomy. All those things are a bigger factor. It's like what they say: people don't leave jobs because of pay or something like that. It's typically people leave jobs because of their leader, right? Their manager. So I think that belief that fundamentally disagree with is that money is the motivator.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's go rapid fire. Okay, what's the best piece of career advice you ever received?
Have your sail up before the wind comes. And if it's too, much of an analogy, what I'm saying is like everybody wants to get promoted, everybody wants that next role, but like don't apply or talk about it before doing all the things you need to do to prepare yourself for that role.
Yeah, I love it. If you could recommend only one book to a new salesperson, what would it be?
Yeah, tough because there's a lot of good ones, but I like New Sales Simplified by Mike Weinberg. When I went through that book, really good content on what sales is nowadays.
Yeah, good book. Who is the most insightful or impactful person you've learned from in the last 12 months?
Um, as far as learn from, I mean, listen, my current boss, who I came to work for here at Square, Tom Hanrahan, has been a fantastic leader, and I've gotten a chance to learn a lot from him. We used to be peers 10 years ago, and now I'm working for him, and he treats me as a partner, but like a lot of great things to learn just from his acumen, his knowledge, his experience here. He's been at Square for 10 years, so it's just fascinating to learn from him. Outside of that, obviously, I read a lot of books, but I learned a lot from I think it's called Ride of a Lifetime from Bob Iger's book about Disney. And I thought that was fantastic. So learned a lot just from that book itself.
Amazing. Sho, I'm curious, what is one supplement you take or health routine you do to keep sane?
Yeah, probably not the answer you want to hear, but I don't think I do any of those. But as far as health, I would think it's more about being able to walk away and take breaks and do what you need to do in that time that you need to clear your mind, etc. And mine is actually play video games, right? I get on Madden, I'm on the joysticks, I'm on my PS5 playing with other people, and it's when I'm not thinking about anything but playing in the game, and it helps me. So it's not a health ritual, but I would encourage anyone that it's just more so stepping away from the desk, stepping away from the phone, and just doing what makes you happy, or think about something completely else.
No, that works. I like it. What are the three? What are the three most impactful books you've ever read?
Yeah, that's another hard question because I feel like I've read so many and I like a lot. Who's Got Your Back by Keith Ferrazzi is a great one. It's actually one that I don't think a lot of salespeople read, but it's so great. It's a networking book, but it's great about understanding how to build teams and the people around you. Delivering Happiness, I mentioned, by Tony Hsieh. I would also say Legacy, the story of the New Zealand All Blacks. It's a great book on culture. So I really encourage that one. And if I just had to throw in a few more just because I like it, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, obviously I like. And Patty McCord wrote a book called Powerful about the story of Netflix. And I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, I read that book, Shoe Dog, and amazing. The amount of adversity he went through, most people would have quit, right? He kept on going.
And then at a different time too, right? Like back then, like the things he went through, like you didn't have like the social media, the future technology stuff. I mean, him traveling and doing the things he did back then and try to become who he is. It was fantastic reading.
Yeah. What's one tech tool or app that you can't live without?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll be honest with you. My calendar is my homepage. It's on my phone. It's integrated. I work with it at the home. Our hub on our TV, etc., shows the calendar with my wife and I. Like we truly use that tool to maximize everything that we do. if it wasn't calendar and work related, I mean, I'm probably on FanDuel or United app really a lot with the travel as well as, sports betting.
Cool, cool. Okay, fill in the blank. Sales is,
Fun. I enjoy it. It's fun to me.
yeah, that's good. I like that. What's the most important skill for a salesperson to master in 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, I think again, back to basics would be prioritization, right? I think again, we have so much noise thrown us that if a salesperson learns how to prioritize it, Stephen Covey has his, 7 disciplines of effective habits, etc., and it talks about urgent and important in the quadrant to know like where to put things. People get the concept. People don't know how to apply it in their day to day. And I think if they really learn how to prioritize and know like what's urgent, what's important, what's not urgent, what's not important, like it will maximize their day. The other thing is like everybody's probably going to say utilize AI. I think there is a opportunity for even sales to use AI and chat GPT and things like that. So I think there's great ways to like prospect better, do your research and using chat GPT to like gather information and research and who to go after, etc., that we can get better at.
Amazing. Yeah, I agree. If you could have dinner with any historical business leader or current business leader, who would it be?
Yeah, I think that was a tough question to think about too. Steve Jobs probably is one. One of the stories I read in Bob Iger's book was that, Steve Jobs was Pixar and the conversations they had. And even like when Steve Jobs actually had conversations with Jack Dorsey and things like that, it's just like so fascinating that it's not just even Apple, right? He did so much more, but just somebody that I would want to meet, sit down with, learn from.
Yeah, I agree. What's your go-to strategy for staying motivated through a tough sales day?
I think back to taking the breaks as you need. When I was at University of Phoenix and we were a leader and we had a ping pong table on the floor, like we would take 15 and go play a game of ping pong and it get just mind off of like some bad calls. Maybe you got off a call that they hung up on you or, it didn't go well and just grab a partner and, go play. But it's all about take 5 or take 15 or take 60, depending on what you need and how you need it. But stepping away and doing that thing that makes you not think about work. And for me, like I said, video games is one. Sometimes I'll go take a walk with my dog, etc., if I needed to. But I would say just take breaks throughout the day.
Yeah, yeah. What's one thing you wish you knew earlier in your sales career?
I'd say build my portfolio. I think over the past, several years, I've done it a lot more. But like from early on, like, what's your portfolio? Like brag book and etc. And it's not about just like, oh, you need that for like hiring and jobs, but it's really like to showcase your work. I mean, sales is different than a lot of other functions where you do have like a portfolio of work that you've done. So it's just putting together that portfolio in sales that you can truly say like, here are like the best accounts I've closed. Here's like the references and referrals that I've put together. Here's projects I've done in my job that, have scaled, or here's a project that I initiated and created. But like it would be great for all salespeople to go back and think about those things, but like put together your portfolio. And if I had the opportunity to do it since I first started, I would have probably had a lot more stuff that I can showcase. But wasn't thinking about that at that time.
No, you're right. I think they're great for like job interviews, performance reviews, networking.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the most common mistake you see salespeople making?
Probably lack of follow up. I mean, again, I could always dive into the calendar side. I think, managing the calendar, but like if I was to use a sales skill set, probably lack of follow up. I think, people do follow ups here and there. Sometimes people like get to follow up the next day when it's more important to get it that day. It's the content in the follow up. Did you actually listen to them and then be relevant to what you said? I think there's the follow up game is not as strong.
Yeah. If you could ban one sales cliche forever, what would it be?
Dollar for dollars, right? Like that whole thing. It's like, listen, maybe it works in certain types of roles or places, but it's just something that, like, I think it's silly. Again, like I said, money isn't the only motivator, right? The culture, the person that they work for is more important to me. So, yeah, the dollar for dollars. Maybe also work-life balance. I also feel like that's a cliche that, people say, but I believe in work-life integration, right? Like, how do you actually embody that? How do you allow like my bosses and my teams know like, hey, I have my daughter, I have to go do that stuff, and they also have family and personal life, like giving them the opportunity to just do that and work around those things are more important to me than going, I need to separate myself from work and balance and like be a different person almost versus be you in both spaces and just bring it together.
Yeah, and I think COVID with the whole Zoom stuff really allows us to do that nowadays, right? Like, what's one KPI you always keep your eye on?
Yeah, ramp numbers. I think it's important, like get people going right away from the beginning. So, looking at ramping stats for reps and people and how they're doing in their first 60, 90 to 180 days.
Yeah. Okay, a few more show. What's the most underrated skill in sales today? The one that people don't talk about, but it's important.
Yeah, it's probably again. I'm using it a lot, but calendar management and prioritization. It's probably again how many sales leaders are talking about it on a daily or weekly basis and doing trainings on it. They're not, and it's probably the biggest bang for the buck if you focus on helping people learn how to block out their time and prioritize that time, and then you'll just get more of whatever you want.
100%, yeah. What's one thing you always want to include on a sales discovery call? If you're telling your reps, we must do this one thing on that call, what would it be?
Making sure you've done your research and prep, right? That what'll happen is if you do your research and prep, you're not asking questions that you could have seen online and you look silly. That's one of the biggest pet peeves I have is you ask a question, but that question answer is already available. And now you're asking someone that's probably going to think like, why didn't you just look at my website and see that answer? Let's probably just do your research and prep prior to the discovery call so you know the things to ask correctly and relevant.
Definitely. What's the hardest lesson you've ever learned as a sales leader?
As a sales leader, probably again separating performance management conversations with like relationships you build. It's one of the toughest things. You work with your teams and people on a daily basis. You become friends with people because you're spending 80 hours a month or whatever. Like it's not 80 hours a month, but like in general, you're in one-on-ones, you're in team meetings, you're having relationships, you're having conversations. You become so close with them, and then when that time is there that you have to have a performance management conversations, it's not fun. It's not easy. So it was a hard lesson that I had to learn to understand how to separate that and show them that this performance management conversation is because I care about you and I want to help you, whether it's here or elsewhere. But like that was something I had to go through and learn as a leader.
Yeah, that's tough. Two more questions. If you could add one feature to your current CRM, what would it be?
Probably the sales methodology, right? Like whatever methodology you use, like a med pick or value selling or even challenger sell, embodying that into the CRM. Because, and again, I've done it in previous orgs, but like right now, that would be a huge help because then it's in the forefront when you're putting your notes, when you're calling, when you're making your dials with the CRM in front of you. You're thinking about that methodology all the time too. I think it's a great way, so that way it doesn't become out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. If you could if you could summarize your sales philosophy in one sentence, what would it be?
Again, a hard one because I have so many like cliches I probably say. One is Peter Drucker saying culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think I'm just big on that because I believe like culture will beat all those things. The other thing is I'm a big believer in Mamba mentality. So, just having a Mamba mentality so you're continuously trying to get better. Are you better today than you were yesterday?
Yeah, Kobe. Last question. If you could create a new sales tool from scratch, what problem would you solve?
Because I think about the culture side so much, I probably would want to think of some sort of more engagement in this remote first world. Like I'm a big believer in remote first world. I think it works. I would love sales tools. And I know we tried this and maybe there's companies out there before where there was like, you're creating virtual worlds that you could be in and be you and create it. But like, I don't think it's been built the right way. So if there was a tool that could create a true way to create an engaged workforce in a virtual space while all being remote, I would love that. And again, I haven't seen that yet. That would make the most sense.
Amazing. Well, Sho, thank you for the conversation. I loved your insights. I've learned a lot. I have my pen and paper down here. I'm curious if people want to get a hold of you, what should I put in the show notes that people can connect with you as far as LinkedIn's and your URL, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, biggest thing is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where I'm at. Connect with me on LinkedIn. My newsletter is also linked in my LinkedIn that you can sign up for the Pay It Forward newsletter that's starting in 2025. So that way you can kind of get new video insights. The things that I'm talking about is basically what I'll be sharing in the videos and in the newsletter. It'll be bi-weekly. It's not up yet, but showforward.com will be the website, SHO forward, FORWARD.com. But once that's up, that'll be a great place to also check my stuff out as I continue to build that while continuing my career here at Square.
Amazing. Well, I'll put those links in the show notes. I'll also subscribe to your newsletter because I want to make sure that content coming in. So thank you so much for your time. Have a blessed day, and thank you for all your knowledge, okay?
Thanks so much, Ian. Have a great day.